Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings Pick6 and RotoWire's free trial, rotowire.com/try for a free look behind the curtain, behind the paywall. It is Friday the 13th, boys. Don't put a parlay in today. Alex Barutha, Shannon McEwen, and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard.
Let's jump right into the news. Scottie Barnes is going to be reevaluated in 1 week following a right ankle sprain. I assume he will be out longer. Pretty nasty. He landed on Karl Anthony Towns' foot. It snapped sideways. You've all seen an ankle sprain. But he was on the ground. He's telling the trainers, I can't feel my foot, all this stuff. So I won't be surprised if he's out for 2+ weeks. Anyway, last night, the Raptors did play in Miami and lost 114-104. But we had Jonathan Mogbo play 30 minutes, 4 points, 10 rebounds, 4 dimes, and a steal. We also had Kelly Olynyk go 0 for 6 in his 12 minutes, but had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. That's my guy.
The clinic.
And then Grady Dick, 22 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. If I'm not mistaken, we will be talking a decent amount of Raptors later in the podcast. But Shannon, is there anything you want to get off your chest before then regarding the Scottie Barnes injury?
It's just a tough loss. There's not much you can do until there's a concrete timeline. Wait until he's reevaluated, see what's going to happen. And in the meantime, just stash him on your bench.
Is there a chance? What's the chances the Raptors season is over by the time he comes back? And then why do you push his return?
That's a good question. They have. Do you want to guess off the top of your head, Ken, how many road wins you think they have?
1.
Exactly correct. They have 1 road win this season. They're 7-19, 1-12 on the road. Their season, they're in a spot that it's not exactly like the Pelicans, but you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole that's pretty significant, maybe easier in the East than in the West, because right now the Bulls are in the 10 seed at 10-15.
Yeah.
And the Raptors are 7-19, but yeah, no reason to rush him back.
And you've got obviously Boston and Cleveland. They're not getting bad. What's best case scenario? Playing, losing the play-in. Right.
It's just an ankle sprain. They pay him millions of dollars to play basketball. He should come back in a few weeks when he's healthy. It's really okay, guys.
Good point. Good point. Also, the news item, you properly pronounced the rookie Jonathan
Mogbo.
Last name.
G is silent. Like lasagna. Shannon, take us to a game that was in New Orleans.
Our boy Domantas Sabonis had a big night, 32 points, 20 rebounds, and a win over the Pelicans. Maybe there's room for 3 players to dominate in fantasy in Sacramento. I would actually argue 4, because Malik Monk is a gangsta.
Monk has been awesome. If the problem is if you didn't pick him up right when he started that first game, it's too late now. He's just not available. He had a bad night last night, of course, because I put him in the best bets column. He goes 1 for 5 from 3 for 5 points, but he had 9 assists. So he's just out there doing stuff right now, and certainly a must roster player in fantasy. Yeah, Ken, give us your Celtics propaganda.
Peyton Pritchard, fast PP, posted 27 points, 10 dimes, and 7 3-pointers. He is the first Boston Celtic in their storied history to come off the bench for a plus 25 point, 10 assist, plus 5 3-pointer game ever in the rich history of the Celtics. First time ever. In their nice win over the Pistons last night. Last week, we begged you to pick up Peyton Pritchard. He was available in 51% of leagues last week. He ain't going to be that available now. Hope you picked him up. No Jason Tatum in Boston's win over the Pistons. And really, these Pritchard peaks are whenever they rest Brown or Tatum. or D. White or Holiday, but there's plenty of good talent to rest in Boston, and they love throwing extra minutes at fast PP.
I think, well, Shannon, I'll clear out a little bit for you about this Pistons win, but we had Jalen Duren out. So as Beef Stew starts, Ron Holland had a pretty nice game off the bench.
Holland had a great game off the bench, but that all came in garbage time. It was the fourth quarter. The Pistons were already down by 20 plus points, so it's hard to read too much into it. It's encouraging long term to see a rookie step up and have that kind of performance. Certainly encourages my thought on Ron Holland, because we haven't seen a ton this year. When the Pistons were dealing with some injuries earlier, he would get a little bit of run, showed a little bit of upside on the defensive end, but the offensive end has been pretty rough. He's raw. He needs to develop still. But last night, very good on offense. 11 for 14 from the floor, 2 for 5 from 3-point land, and 2 for 2 from the stripe. 26 points in 32.8% usage and 21 minutes of run. He chipped in a couple of rebounds, didn't do anything on the defensive end, but certainly encouraging to see Holland get hot and have a nice little game here. I don't think we're gonna see much from him this season from a fantasy perspective. There's just, the Pistons are a little bit too competitive for them to just go all in and give Holland, 20 to 25 minutes on a nightly basis. Maybe the latter half of the season after the All-Star break, or if they fall out of the play-in contention, then we see Holland see a little bit more run.
Well, now it's time for fan questions, and let's stay in Detroit, Shannon, as the first one is kind of pointed at your Pistons. Prince wants to know, should he drop Jaden Ivey to add Zach Edey?
Ooh. I'm passing on that. I would stick with Ivey. Ivey's still been fairly productive. Last night, again, it was a blowout, so his minutes were a little bit muted, 27 minutes. Every once in a while, you'll have a guy like Sasser come off the bench and steal some run from Ivey. But overall, Ivey's still been very productive this season on a per-game basis. I'll have to double check that later. On a per-game basis, still very solid. Edey's good. I mean, if you're desperate for center stats, that's fine. I'm skeptical, that Edey's going to be reinserted back into Memphis' starting lineup. They've been playing really well without him. I still expect him to play 15, 20 minutes a game, get you some rebounds, score a little bit, and block a shot and a half or so per game. So if you're desperate for that kind of production from a big man, then go ahead, make the move. But I think you can possibly dangle Ivey in a trade, use him in a 2-for-1 sweetener, get a better center than Edey. So I'd look at other options before just making that 1-for-1 swap.
Guys, as you can imagine, we're getting a lot of Scottie Barnes comments. I'll just pick Christian's comment. He's just wondering, should I trade him away? Shannon, you were saying, of course, he's paid millions and should play right away when he's healthy. I was a little more cynical. What type of deal, if you're a Scottie Barnes manager, what type of trade offers should you be making?
I think so. Over the past month, he's like the 35th ranked player in 8 cat, and I think that's pretty real, relatively speaking. Per game. Yeah, per game. So I think if you can get a player in that range back, and you are worried about the shutdown risk, which I think is fair, I think you can do it. I would not be trying extremely hard to trade him away, because I do think there is a chance the Raptors, I said they only have 1 road win. They are not that far out of the play-in game for when Scottie Barnes comes back, and they have shown to be a little bit competitive. But if you are worried about it, and that's completely fine, if you can get a top 35 player back in a trade, I think that's fine.
I agree with that assessment. I mean, if you're looking at per game averages and players that rank in a similar position to Barnes is right in the 50 range right now in a per game for 9 cat. You've got guys like Cade Cunningham, Trae Young. You're not going to get those guys in trade for an injured Scottie Barnes. Maybe Pascal Siakam. That's more doable.
Could you trade for Şengün?
I mean, yes, I would in a heartbeat, but I don't think
who makes that deal? Come on, yeah.
Yeah, the Goon manager will laugh at that offer today, I believe. Maybe a week from now, if Barnes' injury turns out to be a minor ankle injury, that's not the case. But I mean, I'm waiting the week before I pull the trigger at all. If you are just that worried about Barnes, I would still try to get someone in the top 35-40 range, a Pascal Siakam type. But if you start dip a little bit lower, PJ Washington, Michael Porter Jr., that's not enough for me. I would rather wait to see what happens with Barnes.
All right, gentlemen. And then let's go to Chicago, where John wants to know, is there a center that you would deal Dosunmu for, the Bulls guard who's having a nice breakout season?
A specific center? I mean,
who's the center you target?
I mean, Dosunmu's kind of like a top 100/85. Like he's like a back end 10 team guy right now. Centers, I mean, you're talking about like what? I don't know if Edey you could probably just pick up off the waiver wire, but no one's gonna give you Hartenstein, I don't think. I don't know. Do you have someone in mind, Shannon?
No, it's pretty tough comp because AO is on a nice little run. Patrick Williams was out. He made his return he's making his return tonight. Dosunmu might not be long for the starting lineup. The Bulls are most likely going to want some extra size in there. So right now, Dosunmu is around that 100 to 120 range on a per game basis. He's been higher over the past couple of weeks because of the lack of Patrick Williams in the rotation. But you look at just on the season per game value. I mean, Derek Lively is a guy who's very close ranking wise. If you want to aim a little bit higher, it's tough because I don't think you're going to be pulling. Al Horford, that's not going to move the needle enough for you. Naz Reid, pretty lateral moves with those guys. So if you're able to aim a little bit higher and maybe get a Hartenstein, there's just no way. You'd have to sweeten the pot. And I don't think the guys that are within AO's range are that enticing.
Okay, one last question. Let's go to Atlanta. Mr. Paul wants to know your thoughts on Zachary Risacher these past games. Is he a drop in a 16-teamer? Oh, my goodness, the first pick in the draft.
Probably. I would say he's probably a drop because right now he's essentially only giving you points, sometimes rebounds, and they're healthy now. I mean,
right? Bad percentages.
I actually think Risacher long term, I think he's actually he's a high IQ player. He knows how to play the game. I actually kind of like him. But now that the Hawks are fully healthy, they're playing well. You got Bogdanovich off the bench taking usage. DeAndre Hunter's playing well. I think you can probably drop him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board with that for this season, even in a 16-team league that's deep. I mean, if you're swapping him for a comparable player who's ranked like 240, who has basically zero upside this season, that will always sit on your bench. If you're not swapping him for a player that's going into your starting lineup, I don't think there's necessarily a need to make the swap. You can just keep him on your bench and it's essentially a stash. But if it's for a guy who will crack your lineup even every other week or once every 3 weeks, then it's worth taking a look. There are going to be players that will provide more value than Risacher has so far this season because his percentages are going to be a mess. But like Alex, I like him long-term, but long-term extends beyond this season, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. And with that, Alex, take us to the waiver wire.
The waiver wire. We have a more normal week this upcoming week, but we still have a fairly light one. So although Sacramento, if you're streaming, Sacramento has 4 games. We also have 17 teams with 2 games, and the rest have 3. So not a bad streaming opportunity this week, especially for people in daily leagues. You can also take advantage of that. I will kick things right off. Bilal Coulibaly, 36% rostered in Yahoo. People were asking, can I drop him? Sure, you could drop him. Was not a bad move at the time. Pick him up, pick someone else up. He finally had a bounce back game after shooting like 29% from the field. Posted 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and a block. This is not me being like, oh, he had one good game, so you have to pick him back up, right? But even during that cold stretch, he was averaging 26 fantasy points per game. I know we don't do a lot of points league talk on the show, but that is a 12 league bench guy in a points league. I think where his averages are not, he was so hot early in the season, then he was so cold. So I think now where his averages are probably what he's just about to be at the rest of the season for the most part, which is 12 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2.2 stocks. If that guy was John Doe on the waiver wire, you would pick him up. And Washington, they're going to trade Brogdon or sit him. They're going to trade Valanciunas or sit him. There's going to be a lot of phantom injuries come the end of the year. If you can grab Coulibaly now and afford to have him on your bench, and just you don't have to start him every week. I think he's a good pickup now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, 100% agree. He had an 8-game stretch to open the season where he shot like 57% from the floor. Prior to last night, his 8-game stretch, he was shooting 21% from the floor. So there's going to be, it's going to be a roller coaster ride with percentages, but the production in the other categories has remained. And right now, even, he's on the season, he's shooting 43.3%. He was 43.5% last year, but we've seen improvements with free throws, 70% last year, 78% this year. The upside's there. I think we're going to continue to see growth throughout the year as well.
All right, well, I'm actually going to recommend 2 players because they're essentially the same human being. Same game, same position, same stats. So go with either Grayson Allen on Phoenix, who's only rostered in 18% of Yahoo leagues, or Kevin Huerter, Red Velvet, on Sacramento, who's rostered even lower at 10%. Let's start with Allen. Allen's a career 45% shooter over a 7-year career, which includes 50% that he shot last year. He started the season horribly this year, but he's been hot lately, and he's basically just regressing to the mean. Over his last 10 games, 13 points, 2.5 3-pointers, 49% from the field, which is nice, and over 3.5 boards. Phoenix has 3 games next week. But maybe you prefer the fact that Sacramento has 4 games next week. So if you want quantity, go with Red Velvet, Kevin Huerter. 2 of those games that the Kings have upcoming are against the defensively challenged Lakers, and 1 is against the fast-paced Pacers. So both teams play bad D. I know Malik Monk's a starter, but that means Huerter is the top scorer off the bench for them. And again, Kings are the only team with 4 games next week.
Nice recommendations, Ken. Like you, I'm going with 2 guys for my first waiver wire rec. Ochai Agbaji with the Toronto Raptors. He had a big stretch earlier this year while Scottie Barnes was out. It was his best stretch of the year when Barnes was sidelined from October 30th to November 18th. During that 11-game stretch, Agbaji averaged 13.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.2 steals, and 2.2 threes, while shooting 50%, 77%, and 45%. He's going to need to shoulder a bigger load. He played 30 minutes last night without Barnes. Agbaji's only rostered in 21% of Yahoo leagues, 25% of ESPN. He had a stretch where he's like a top 50 player earlier to start the season too. There's a lot of upside there for him. He's proven to be a better prospect than I expected when he was coming out of Utah. And then also in Toronto, Gradey Dick. I'm kind of surprised Gradey Dick's only rostered in 46% of Yahoo leagues, 38%. Those numbers should be higher. On the season per game average, Gradey's a top 125 player. That'll go up while Barnes is out, mainly points and 3-pointers. But he can also dish the ball a little bit, and they're going to need him to be a little bit more of a playmaker while Barnes is out. So I expect to see that number bump up a 1.5 assists or so with Barnes on the sideline. I like either of those options out of Toronto.
Warning short term, and I think that Barnes injury is longer term, but Toronto only has 2 games this week.
My second suggestion, 12% rostered guard out of Oklahoma City, Cason Wallace. I was a little concerned initially that Alex Caruso coming back from his injury would cut into Wallace's minutes, but OKC had been running a deep enough rotation that they could pull minutes back from other guys. Cason Wallace, another fantasy point number for people in points leagues, at least 20 fantasy points in 7 straight games, averaging 9 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3.2 stocks in 30 minutes per game during that 7-game stretch. Like I mentioned, Caruso coming back has not affected his role. If you are looking mostly for defense, but someone who can, sprinkle in some other stuff and is a huge part of OKC's future, I think, and just general identity of being one of the best defensive teams of all time, actually. I'm not worried about Wallace's role. And in deep leagues, he should certainly be on your radar.
So he was hopping in and out of the starting lineup a little bit. They would plug in Aaron Wiggins. He has started back-to-back games now. You think he's locked in there in that starting role?
I think it doesn't matter. That's kind of my opinion. There's that Dagnall, he's just switching guys all the time based on lineup. But like sometimes Wallace would come off the bench and play 30 minutes. Sometimes he'd start and play like 24. So some of it's blowouts, some of it's just whatever. I don't really care if he starts or comes off the bench.
Agreed.
All right, well said. Well said. Well, I'm going to go back to Toronto. I also have a Raptor, and this might be more if you're looking for rebounds, but Jonathan Mogbo, he's rostered in 30-something of Yahoo leagues. No, he's not. He's rostered in a lot less. I should look that up. Sorry.
Probably 3%.
3%. Yes. Sorry. 3%. Yes. Oh, and these are long shots. I gave those 2 shooting guards earlier. My next 2 picks are just long shots. And Mogbo at 3%. He had 10. He started last night, played 30 minutes Thursday night, got 10 boards, didn't score much. He's a 23-year-old rookie. He's had 4 games with double-digit scoring. Toronto has only 2 games next week, but look, we're flying darts at who on these Raptors might do well when with Barnes out, and I think Mogbo could get some run.
Mogbo, I think I mentioned him before. He was one of the guys that I wrote his scouting report coming into the season. I really like him. I was like, I want this guy to go at the end of the first round. The Raptors took him at the beginning of the second. Totally a Raptors guy, like undersized, but like a big man who can kind of pass, just like grinds on the offensive boards. It's someone certainly worth a pickup.
Absolutely. All right. So we had a listener ask about Risacher, and I want to recommend his backup, DeAndre Hunter, forward for Atlanta, 41% rostered on Yahoo, 30% rostered on ESPN. Despite being deployed solely off the bench this season, Hunter's putting together his best season as a pro. He's averaging a career high 19.6 points, 2.7 threes, with shooting splits of 48, 88, and 44% in 28 minutes per game off the bench. I assumed Bogdanovich was going to be this team's big 6 man, but Hunter's been great for Atlanta this year. He's been a top 90 player for fantasy on a per game basis. And he needs to be rostered in far more than 41% of Yahoo leagues moving forward.
Yeah, his efficiency has been huge this year. I think some of it will come down, but I was also looking into his numbers, and he cut his long mid-range attempts in half. So he is focusing on floaters and 3-pointers more now, and I do think that that's helped his efficiency too. And like you mentioned, Shannon, they just off the bench, they're like, look, man, just score. They're not worried about like him trying to mesh with or people stealing his points in the starting lineup. It's been great for him. My final suggestion, and this is a long shot for deep leagues, Justin Champagnie of the Washington Wizards, not Julian Champagnie of the San Antonio Spurs. Justin Champagnie, 10% roster in Yahoo right now. Washington just dealing with a ton of injuries. Everybody's hurt. Past 3 games for Champagnie, averaging 15 points, 7 boards, 1 assist, and 3 stocks, which are actually pretty close to his per 36 career averages. So if he can continue to see minutes in the, let's say 20, anywhere from like 20 to 30, he could probably be worthy of a roster spot in deep leagues. The problem here is that Washington only plays 2 games this week. So my concern would be I pick him up and then I don't really get to use him, and then Washington gets healthy. So this is real deep league stuff, maybe more of even a daily lineups league type of thing, but someone that I will at least keep on my radar because the Washington tanking situation at the end of the season, this is somebody that could benefit from that. So at the very least, I would say watch list Champagnie, keep him on your radar.
Look, let's admit this is just not a great week for free agents.
No.
And really my suggestions illustrate that well. I also have a very long shot. It's another Raptor dart, 19-year-old rookie Jacoby Walter, the rookie out of Baylor. Again, the Barnes injury just leaves Toronto in a very tough spot. They may just hand the keys over to all the youngsters there, just see what they have. He's a scorer. He's someone you're going for points. He's going to gun. But if you've got like a development squad slot or something on your roster, Walter, 4 years younger than Mogbo, though they're both rookies, but you might see him in a 6-man scoring role and could be useful for very deep leagues.
Yeah, Walter is he shoots a lot of tough shots. Yes. Another guy I happened to write the scouting report for before the season, and it's like he took half of his shots from 3 and shot 34%, not because he's a bad shooter, but because every shot he took was like contested on the run, So and at some point the Raptors just need a guy to do that, like late in the shot clock, because they're not a great offense. So yeah, he will certainly be firing up shots. And
it's a little disturbing that he has the same hairstyle as Chris Boucher. And I find that when you're watching on League Pass, I'm sort of like, was Boucher who forced that bad, mid range? Oh, it was Walter. Okay,
right. Who is your last suggestion, Shannon?
All right, this is a guy I've recommended earlier this season, Anthony Black, guard for the Orlando Magic. 20-year-old guard, great size, 6'7", over 200 pounds. I love me some Ant Black. With Franz Wagner and Banchero both out. Banchero might be back in a few weeks, but Orlando is devastated right now. They need people who can create. They need people who can just do anything with the ball, even if it's set up other teammates. And Ant Black can do that alongside being a defensive pest. He had a big performance against the Bucks in the NBA Cup quarterfinal, finishing with 17.6 rebounds, 3 steals, 3 assists, and 1 block in 32 minutes. Risky percentages, but tons of upside. I think he's a solid streaming option until the Magic get their 2-star players back.
It'd be nice to see the Magic get a quality, legit point guard, not always forcing tweeners in that role. Black could be that guy. Suggs is a great player, but he's not a true point guard. He's a shooting guard. I don't know. I can't remember the last time they had a legit point guard in Orlando.
They could have been like a Tyus Jones team, you would think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right, Shannon. Black, if you don't need scoring stats, Black is like a way better option than he might seem on the surface. Like if you're just looking for the rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, Black is going to be better than his rank would tell you. Okay, that does it for our waiver wire. And now a word from DraftKings Pick6.
Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks. Compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, let's talk some DraftKings Pick 6. Today's 8-game Friday slate. Highest over-under, although there are a lot of high over-unders, but we have Washington at Cleveland at 232. Cleveland's also 17-point favorites for that game. Could maybe give you some garbage time Wizards players. Justin Champagnie, make sure you're warmed up on the bike before this game. All right, Shannon, I will pass it to you first. What caught your eye on this slate?
Yeah, first I'll point out 2 pick 6 options that I really like. Both I'm leaning more on. Kelly Oubre with the Philadelphia 76ers, 10.5 points. I'm going hard on the more there. Oubre has scored 11 or more points in 8 straight. Oftentimes well more than 11 points, which coincides with his promotion back into the starting lineup. As long as he's starting, and by every indication at this point is he's going to be starting again on Friday night. I'm pounding the more on that 10.5 points. And then another more, Walker Kessler, 22.5 for his points, rebounds, plus assists. Since returning from an eye injury, Kessler's been on a nice little tear here. He's averaged 26.2 PRA in those 8 games. So again, those are 2 easy mores that I'm going to pound until those lines go up.
I have one from that Jazz Suns game that I'll throw out, which is Kevin Durant over 2.5 threes. The 3-point lines right now are not up for the other players, but I would look into those just because over the past 10 games, the Jazz are allowing opponents to shoot 41 3-pointers per 48 minutes, which is second most. So Phoenix should be firing them up against Utah. That is for sure. I also have 2 more quick ones that I can offer up before I essentially clear out for Shannon to go ISO. This is not a bet I normally make, but Nikola Jokic under 13.5 rebounds against the LA Clippers. Clippers play slow. They got Zubac. They have barely been giving up any rebounds lately. They actually give up the 3rd fewest per 48 over the past 10. And I think last time they played, Jokic had like 11 rebounds or something similarly low. And then Brandon Miller, over 26.5 points against the Chicago Bulls. This Bulls team gives up a ton of points. 123 points per 48 over the past 10. That is second most in the NBA. They are banged up. Josh Giddey is questionable. Patrick Williams is questionable. Vucevic is questionable. Levine's banged up, but probably will play. I don't really expect a lot of defensive resistance here, and Charlotte's still down LaMelo. They might get Miles Bridges back. I would maybe keep an eye on that. But Brandon Miller has been cooking lately and has at least 20 points in 11 straight games.
Yeah, I mean there's 2 games. Like I'm gonna transition this very smoothly, obviously, to the DFS talk. And there are 2 games on the DFS side. That Charlotte game is one of them that I am targeting heavily. Both Charlotte versus Chicago. We've talked about this almost on a weekly basis. Chicago plays at a very high pace. Opposing guards do really well against them. And then the second game being Washington and Cleveland. Essentially, any player from either of those matchups is a pretty good option on FanDuel tonight. Coulibaly, who we talked about earlier, is at 5,200 on DraftKings. Champagnie is at 4,500. He's been earning those spot starts and has a couple straight solid performances on the DFS end. Sar's back from a 2-game absence. He could see a nice line. I'm not in love with the matchup for Washington's front court, but they're pretty thin there with George out. Valanciunas 5,500, and then on the Chicago Charlotte side, like you said, Bridges is the one to keep an eye on. If Bridges returns, Miller is a straight fade for me. I'm already leaning that way towards Brandon Miller. as a fade because he's up over $9,000 now on DraftKings. He's
It's a
been
lot.
heavily rostered. You basically need him to, get 45 to 50 fantasy points for that to make sense. And that's just too much, too heavy, too high of a salary to really dive in. So I'm avoiding him for tonight's slate. One other game that I like with LeBron James out, I want to see where the Lakers are at with their starting lineup. D'Angelo Russell, who has had his ups and downs this year, had a big game with LeBron out, over 60 fantasy points on DraftKings the other night. Hachimura had a great game that night as well. Rua is actually still pretty affordable too, 5,500 on DraftKings, 61 for D'Angelo Russell. I think either of those guys are going to be solid options for tonight's slate. And then Kelly Oubre, who we discussed earlier, he is at 5,500, and I like the matchup against the Pacers, and he's just been playing well since being reinserted in the starting lineup. Two cheap options I wanted to get your thoughts on, Alex. Kevin Porter coming off a big game. He had a spot start for James Harden. Harden is back Friday night, but Porter was already seeing more run, kind of coming into his own a little bit. He's 4,200, even in a reserve role where he might only play 25 to 28 minutes. I think 4,200 is a pretty good price and makes him a cheap option to consider.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, if you can get even 20 minutes out of Porter, which has essentially been his floor over the past month or so, he could have a ceiling game. And if you're only, if his salary's only 4,000, he's not killing you even if he has one of his subpar games, right? So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and even in the reserve role, he missed 3 games because of injury prior to that spot start on December 8th. But you look at the 5 games before his 3-game absence, he topped 24 minutes, 4 out of those 5 games. You've got Chris Dunn, who's still working in the starting lineup for the Clippers, but he's not playing heavy minutes. They're leaning more heavily on Porter as the season wears on, and I think we're going to see that even continue tonight with Harden back. One other cheap option, and this is just keeping tabs on the injuries, but Nikola Vucevic is questionable currently, and if he sits, Jalen Smith, Chicago Bulls, 3,500. He's already been a per minute monster. He's very productive in the 15 to 20 minutes he plays off the bench every game. If the minutes open up and Smith's able to get 30 minutes run, receive a spot start, he's going to be a smash at 3,500.
1.2 fantasy points per minute for Jalen Smith. If he's about, what'd you say, 3,500, something like that?
Yeah.
That's 10x potential in a fairly soft matchup. So yeah, if Vooch is out, I'm 100% on Jalen Smith.
All right, that does it for my DFS Rex for the evening.
Awesome. All right, Ken, you're back. Give us your old man rant.
Arg! Damn you, NBA Cup. There were barely any basketball games last week. My Celtics played Saturday, then rested Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. What am I supposed to do for those 4 nights? Spend quality time with my family? Christmas shop? Community service? Bah humbug. I need basketball. And I need games on a normal wood court, not these Technicolor vomit NBA Cup floors. Stop messing with me, NBA. The wife wants Hallmark Channel, and I want to watch hoops. Arrgh!
Yeah, if you want to hoops, maybe you should have made the cup. How about that? Try making the cup next year, like the Bucks.
We have bigger things to play for than the little cup thing in Vegas. I'd rather my guys stay very far away from Vegas. Stay home, ice your bodies. Don't go to any entertainment venues in the Vegas area.
I presented this idea to you, I think, when we were at the holiday party. I don't this feels like an opportunity with the NBA Cup. You mentioned the floors. Floors are crazy. They want everybody to know it's the Cup. I think they're overdoing it, and they're making it like a meme almost. They're overdoing it.
Painful.
Why don't they just? They should bring back the ABA ball, the red, white, and blue ball.
Love it
for the Cup games. It lets everybody know, hey, this is a Cup game.
Yeah.
But it's subtle. It doesn't hurt anybody's eyes. It doesn't offend people over 50. It just and it's cool.
Maybe
Who's
the ball's
against that?
black, gold, and white instead of red, white, and blue or something. But whatever. Yeah, exactly. I love that idea. Everyone watches the ball.
Unbelievable. I see.
Also, by the way, by the Celtics not making the Cup, we got an extra game against Washington. Thank you. And Shannon's Pistons. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It appears we have a fill-in on the Google sheet for a mispronounced name.
The Orlando, Shannon's pronunciation of the Anglo forward in Orlando.
Franz is a hard name for me.
Yeah.
I just want to call him Frank. I want to call him Frank every time.
Frank Wagner. When he has a bad game, we can call him Frank Wagner. But 7 points last night in the loss.
I always think Wagner. Isn't there a German classical music writer? Wagner. I think the Nazis liked playing Wagner for some weird reason.
I don't know.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you and apologies to our sponsors for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by DraftKings Pick6. Ken, take us out of here.
Yeah, let's go to Boston. The Celtics have won their last 12 games versus the Pistons. It goes all the way back to February 2022. That includes 3 games this season. Even though Jason Tatum was missing from 2 of those 3 games, the Celtics still won them all. Pistons coach J.B. Bickerstaff said this last night about the Celtics, quote, "They move the ball. This is one of the more unselfish teams that we've seen consistently. They've got immense talent all over the floor. The way they space the floor, creating threes, and those types of things." J.B. Bickerstaff. Attention passengers. This 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.